The sun was just beginning to rise over the wide, empty fields. The sky had a soft orange glow, and the air was crisp with the smell of grass and earth. On the ranch, everything was quiet except for the low, steady sounds of the animals. Cows moved slowly across the pasture, their soft moos blending with the distant calls of birds. The cowboy, a man named Jack, stood near the stable, brushing down his horse. He had been up since before dawn, tending to his chores as he always did. His life was simple but hard. Each day required work from sunrise to sunset, and the work was never ending. Jack had been living on this ranch alone for years. His parents had passed when he was young, and he had inherited the land from his uncle. Over time, he had built a small cabin with his own hands and learned to live without help. He had friends in town, of course, but most days he preferred the quiet of the fields and the company of his animals. Some people might have called him lonely, but Jack didn't feel that way. He felt free. He felt responsible. He felt in control. On this morning, as Jack was checking the fences near the far side of the pasture, he noticed movement near the edge of the woods. At first, he thought it might be an animal, maybe a deer butt. As he got closer, he realized it was a woman. She was young, with dark hair that fell loosely over her shoulders, and her clothes were worn and dusty, as if she had been traveling for a long time. She looked tired, and her eyes held a mix of fear and determination. Jack stopped for a moment, unsure what to do. Visitors were rare in this part of the country, and strangers could be dangerous. He tightened his grip on the reins of his horse and called out carefully, "Hey there! What brings you out here?" The woman stepped closer, her pace slow but steady. "Please, sir, I need your help," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I have nowhere else to go. Please, can I stay?" Jack studied her carefully. There was honesty in her eyes, but also desperation. He had seen people lie to get what they wanted, but there was something different about her. She didn't seem like she was here to steal or cheat. She seemed vulnerable and yet strong. "Why should I let you stay?" Jack asked, keeping his voice calm but firm. "I don't usually take strangers in." The woman's face fell, but then she straightened, determination returning to her voice. "Because I can help you. I can work. I can do more than anyone else could. I promise you, I will not cause trouble. I only ask for a chance." Jack narrowed his eyes. He had heard similar pleas before, but there was a sincerity in her tone that made him hesitate. "Work. What kind of work?" he asked. "I know how to care for animals. Cook, clean. I can help with the ranch." "I'll do anything you need," she said quickly. "I just need a place to stay. I won't ask for more than I can give." Jack considered her words. The ranch was large, and the work was never done. Sometimes he wished he had someone to help, someone he could trust. But the thought of letting a stranger into his home made him uneasy. Still, there was a part of him that was curious about who she was, where she came from, and why she had come to him. "All right," he said finally, his voice cautious. "You can stay. For now. But you work hard, you follow the rules, and you don't cause trouble. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," she said, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I won't disappoint you." Jack led her toward the cabin, keeping a watchful eye on her as they walked. The path was dusty and uneven, but she followed him without complaint. When they reached the cabin, he showed her a small room in the corner that he had set aside for guests, though he rarely used it. "This is where you'll sleep," he said. "There's fresh water and food in the kitchen. Make yourself comfortable, but don't get used to luxuries." "I understand," she replied, her voice soft but steady. Over the next few days, Jack watched her carefully. She worked hard from the moment she woke until the sun went down, tending to the animals, helping in the kitchen, and keeping the cabin clean. She never complained, even when the work was exhausting. Jack was surprised by her skills. She handled the horses as if she had been around them all her life. She could milk the cows without spilling a drop. And she cooked meals that were both simple and nourishing. Despite himself, Jack began to feel a sense of admiration for her. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was strong, capable, and determined, but there was also a warmth to her, a kindness that made the cabin feel less lonely. He found himself talking to her more, asking her questions about her past, her family, and why she had come to the ranch. She answered honestly, never exaggerating or complaining. "I didn't have anywhere else to go," she said one evening, as they sat by the fire after a long day. "The town. People don't understand. I needed to find a place where I could be useful, where I could belong." Jack nodded slowly. He understood that feeling. He had spent much of his life alone, and he knew the value of having someone trustworthy by your side. "You're useful," he said quietly. "That much is clear. But trust, that's harder to earn." "I know," she said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn it. Just let me try." Days turned into weeks, and she continued to prove herself. She didn't just work. She thought ahead, fixing problems before they became serious. She patched fences that Jack hadn't had time to repair, noticed when an animal was sick before it showed obvious signs, and even suggested ways to make daily tasks more efficient. Jack was impressed, though he rarely admitted it. One morning, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the wind began to howl. Jack was outside checking the animals when he realized the storm was stronger than expected. Rain fell in sheets, and lightning lit up the sky. He hurried back to the cabin, worried about the woman and the animals. When he arrived, he found her already working to secure the animals and protect the cabin. She moved with calm efficiency, even as the rain drenched her. "I've got this," she said when she saw him. "Go check the cows." Jack hesitated. He was used to handling storms alone, but her confidence surprised him. "All right," he said. "I'll be quick." Together, they managed to keep the animals safe, even as the storm raged on. By the time the rain stopped, Jack felt a strange sense of respect for her. She wasn't just a helper. She was a partner in the true sense of the word. That night, as they sat by the fire, Jack realized something he hadn't expected. He had let a stranger into his life, a person he didn't know, and yet he felt grateful. For the first time in a long while, the cabin didn't feel empty. He still didn't fully trust her. Not completely. But he saw the value in having someone willing to stand beside him. The woman smiled quietly, sensing his thoughts. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she said. "I know I'm new here, but I want to stay. I want to help, and I want to belong." Jack nodded slowly. "You'll see. Actions speak louder than words. Keep working hard, and maybe one day you'll feel like you belong." And with that, the cabin settled into a quiet calm. Outside, the stars twinkled in the clear night sky. Inside, a small fire crackled, casting warm light onto people who had just begun to share a part of their lives. It was the start of something neither of them could yet fully understand, but it was real, and it was honest. The days that followed would test them in ways they could not imagine. But for now, the first step had been taken. The cowboy had let a stranger into his home, and the woman had promised to prove herself. The future was uncertain, but hope had quietly found its way into the cabin, one simple act of trust at a time. The days passed quietly at first, with the routine of ranch life returning to its usual rhythm. The woman, whose name was Ayanna, proved herself more capable than Jack had expected. She worked from sunrise to sunset, never complaining, and seemed to anticipate what needed to be done before he even spoke. She mended fences, tended to the animals, and cooked meals that warmed both the stomach and the spirit. Jack watched her silently from time to time, noting how natural she seemed around the animals. She moved with ease, calming skittish horses and handling the cows as if she had been born to the work. Her hands were strong but gentle, and her presence seemed to bring a sense of order and calm to the ranch that Jack hadn't realized was missing. Despite her skill, there were moments of tension. Jack, who had lived alone for so long, found it difficult to share the space and responsibilities. He was used to doing things his way, and Ayanna, though respectful, had her own methods. At first, small disagreements arose about how to feed the horses. The best way to repair a fence, or even the order of chores. "Let me handle the cows this morning," Ayanna said one day. Noticing Jack frowning as he prepared to go out, Jack hesitated. "I've done it this way for years," he said. I understand, she replied gently, but I've seen a better way. It will save time and keep the cows calmer. Please, let me try. Jack narrowed his eyes, but finally nodded. All right, just this once. Show me. She worked carefully, speaking softly to the animals and moving with confidence. By the time she finished, the cows were calm and the morning chores were done faster than usual. Jack couldn't help but admit silently that she was right. He gave a curt nod, not wanting to show too much appreciation. Good work, he said simply. Moments like these made Jack realize that he had underestimated her. He had expected someone weak or incapable, someone he would have to constantly watch. Instead, she had proven herself intelligent, capable, and resourceful. Slowly, his suspicion began to fade, replaced by a growing respect. Yet life on the ranch was not without its challenges. One afternoon, as Jack and Ayanna were tending to the far side of the pasture, they noticed that a fence had been damaged. The wind had torn through it during a recent storm. Several cows had wandered out of the enclosure. Jack cursed under his breath. I'll have to find them, he said, already grabbing his rope and heading toward the fields. I'll help, Ayanna said, picking up another rope. Together, they went searching. The cows were spread across the hills, some grazing near a small creek, others closer to the woods. Jack had expected the task to be difficult, but Ayanna's calm voice and steady presence seemed to guide the animals back one by one. She moved with quiet authority, never raising her voice, and the cows responded. By the time they returned, sweaty and tired, Jack felt a sense of pride mixed with surprise. He hadn't expected her to be so effective. You handled that well, he said quietly. Trying not to sound too impressed, Ayanna smiled, brushing her damp hair from her face. It's just about patience and knowing what to do, she said. Animals can sense fear or frustration. They respond to calm. Jack nodded, considering her words. There was wisdom in what she said, and he realized that she had more experience than he had assumed. He had lived alone for years, but perhaps he could learn from her too. As the days turned into weeks, Jack began to notice other things about Ayanna. She had a quiet strength, a determination that refused to be broken even in the face of hardship. She spoke little of her past, but there was a sadness in her eyes that suggested loss or struggle. Occasionally, he would catch her staring at the horizon, lost in thought, and he wondered what stories she carried with her. One evening, after a long day of work, Jack and Ayanna sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and the air was cool and quiet. Ayanna broke the silence first. Jack, may I ask you something? She said softly. Jack looked at her. Go ahead. Why do you live out here, all alone? You could be in town, have friends, or even family. Jack shrugged, staring at the fading light. I like it here. It's quiet. It's honest work. People in town. They complicate things. Here, I know what I'm responsible for, and I like that. Jonna nodded, understanding in her eyes. I think I understand. I've been running from complications myself. I just wanted a place where I could belong, even if only for a little while. Jack was silent for a moment. Her words touched something deep inside him. He had spent years avoiding attachments, afraid of being hurt or disappointed. Yet seeing her sincerity, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: trust. Not complete trust, but enough to let her into a small part of his life. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A neighboring ranch had reported a lost calf that had wandered off during the storm. Jack knew the terrain well, but searching for the calf alone would take hours. Ayanna insisted on helping. You'll be faster with two of us, she said, determination in her voice. Let me come. Jack hesitated. He wasn't used to working with anyone else in such dangerous or uncertain conditions, but there was something in her eyes that made him nod. All right, stay close. They rode together across the hills, calling for the calf and scanning the fields. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip toward the horizon. Just when they were about to give up, Ayanna spotted movement near a rocky outcrop. The small calf was stuck between two boulders, frightened and bleeding loudly. Jack moved carefully, but it was Ayanna who guided the calf back to safety. She approached it calmly, speaking softly, and coaxed it toward the open field where Jack could secure it. He watched her work, impressed by her courage and patience. Once the calf was safe, Jack finally spoke, his voice quieter than usual. You did good. More than good. Yana smiled, though tiredness showed on her face. We did it together, she said. Jack nodded slowly. He realized that this partnership, however new, was growing stronger. They were beginning to rely on each other. He was beginning to understand that trust was built through actions, not words. Even as they returned to the cabin, the bond between them strengthened. Jack found himself sharing small details about his life, things he had never told anyone. He spoke of his parents, of the struggles he faced alone, and of the pride he took in keeping the ranch running. Ayanna listened, never judging, always offering understanding. In return, she shared little pieces of her own story, enough to let Jack know she had faced hardships, but also enough to maintain her dignity. She spoke of growing up in a close-knit community, of learning to work with animals, and of the struggles she faced when her world changed unexpectedly. Jack felt a growing respect for her resilience and character. The days continued in this rhythm work. Shared responsibilities, small talks by the fire, and quiet moments of reflection. The tension that had existed in the beginning slowly gave way to mutual respect and understanding. Jack began to see Ayanna not as a stranger, as someone who could stand beside him through the challenges of ranch life. One night, as they sat together after a long day, a gentle wind rustled the trees, carrying the scent of fresh grass and earth. Ayanna looked at Jack and said softly, I feel like I'm finally where I'm meant to be. I know it's not perfect, and I know I still have to prove myself, but I feel at home. Jack nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. You've done more than prove yourself. You've changed things here. The ranch me. Things are different now, better. Ayanna's eyes reflected the flickering firelight. Thank you for letting me stay, she said quietly. Jack looked away, feeling a mix of pride and something unfamiliar gratitude. Don't thank me yet, he said with a half smile. Keep working hard, and maybe one day I'll let myself fully trust you. She laughed softly, the sound blending with the evening calm. I'll keep trying, she said. The night fell, bringing with it a peaceful silence. The stars twinkled above, and the ranch seemed to breathe along with them. Inside the cabin, a fire burned low, casting a warm glow onto people who were learning to trust and rely on each other. It was a bond forged not in words, but in actions, patience, and shared experience. And though they could not yet see what the future held, both Jack and Ayanna knew that something had begun, something strong, meaningful, and real. The foundation of trust, respect, and partnership had been laid, and no storm, challenge, or doubt could easily shake it. The morning air was cool, crisp, and filled with the scent of wet earth from last night's rain. Jack was already out tending to the animals when he noticed something unusual. A group of strangers approaching the ranch from the far fields. They were not riding like friends or neighbors. Their horses were moving fast, and there was an urgency in their pace that set Jack on edge. He tightened his grip on the reins, signaling caution to Ayanna, who was nearby. Gathering eggs from the chicken coop? Jack. Who are they? She asked, sensing his unease. I don't know yet, Jack said, his voice low. But stay close. Don't make any sudden moves. The strangers rode closer, and Jack could see that they were rough-looking men, covered in dust and with expressions that suggested trouble. One of them called out, his voice carrying across the fields, We're just passing through. Don't mean no harm. Jack studied them carefully. Something about their tone felt wrong, forced. He had learned over the years that trouble often came disguised as innocence. He slowly guided his horse forward, positioning himself between the strangers and the ranch. Ayanna followed him without hesitation. She didn't speak, but her presence beside him was steady, giving him a sense of calm he hadn't realized he needed. She had proven herself time and again, and now, in this moment, he trusted her instincts as much as his own. The leader of the strangers dismounted and approached cautiously. We heard there's a ranch here. Thought maybe you could help us with some supplies, he said, trying to sound friendly. Jack's eyes narrowed. "We have just enough for ourselves. You'll need to move on." The man's friendly mask faltered slightly, and Jack could see the flash of irritation in his eyes. "Now, that's no way to treat travelers," he said, his tone sharpening. Jack didn't back down. "This is my land. You can take nothing without my permission. Now leave before I call the sheriff." Tension hung thick in the air. Ayanna stepped closer to Jack, her calm presence steadying him. "Jack, we can handle this," she whispered, her eyes focused and alert. Jack took a deep breath, knowing she was right. They had faced storms, lost cattle, and long days of labor, but this was different. This was a direct threat. He had to rely on her courage as much as his own. Suddenly, one of the men tried to approach the stable. Jack and Ayanna moved quickly. Jack grabbed a rope, ready to defend the animals, while Ayanna blocked the man's path with a firm voice. "Stop right there. Back away from the animals." The man hesitated, surprised by her command. Jack used the moment to round up the closest horses and move them into a safer enclosure. The tension was thick, but their teamwork was seamless. They didn't need words. Their actions spoke louder than anything. After several tense minutes, the strangers realized that this was not a ranch to be easily intimidated. They muttered under their breath and finally mounted their horses, leaving as abruptly as they had arrived. Jack watched them disappear over the horizon, feeling the weight of adrenaline slowly leave his body. Ayanna exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. "That could have gone badly," she said softly. Jack nodded, his eyes still scanning the fields. "It almost did, but you kept your head." "I don't think I could have done it alone." Ayanna smiled faintly, brushing mud from her sleeve. "We did it together. That's all that matters." For the rest of the day, they moved with quiet alertness. Every sound of rustling leaves or snapping twigs made them pause. Jack realized that he was no longer thinking only of himself or his ranch. He was thinking of her safety, of their shared responsibility. That evening, as they sat by the fire after a long day, Ayanna spoke softly. "Jack, I know you've trusted me, but I want you to know something. I won't let anything or anyone harm this place or you. I'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Jack looked at her, feeling a mixture of gratitude and surprise. He had expected loyalty, of course, but her words carried something more: commitment, courage, and honesty. He nodded slowly. "I believe you, and I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in a long time." The bond between them had grown stronger, not just from shared work, but from facing real danger together. Jack realized that this trust was fragile but powerful, that Ayanna had earned it through her actions, not just her words. Days later, another challenge arose, though of a different kind. A wildfire started on the far side of the hills, likely from lightning during a distant storm. The smoke drifted toward the ranch, and Jack knew that if they didn't act quickly, it could reach the dry fields and threaten the livestock. "We have to move fast," Jack said. Grabbing buckets and preparing hoses, AI was already ahead of him, coordinating the animals and ensuring that the younger, weaker ones were moved to a safer area. "We'll need to make fire breaks," she said, her voice steady despite the urgency. Jack watched as she directed him to areas that needed immediate attention. Her knowledge of the land, the animals, and the practicalities of the ranch shone through. They worked together for hours, sweating and moving tirelessly, until finally the fire was contained and the animals were safe as the smoke cleared in the evening. Sun cast a golden light over the fields. Jack felt an overwhelming sense of admiration for Ayanna. She had not only helped save the ranch, but had proven herself as someone he could rely on in life-threatening situations. Sitting together that night, exhausted but relieved, Jack spoke quietly. "I've lived here a long time alone, and I've faced storms, lost animals, and tough seasons. But today was different. You were different. You're different." Ayanna looked at him, her eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "I just did what needed to be done," she said softly. "I promised you I'd give more than anyone else. Today, I kept that promise." Jack was silent for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. He realized that his life had changed, subtly but deeply. The ranch was no longer just a place of work and solitude, it had become a place of connection, trust, and partnership. Over the following weeks, life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Jack and Ayanna had faced threats, natural disasters, and the challenges of daily work together, and each experience had strengthened their bond. They had learned to read each other's cues, anticipate each other's needs, and rely on one another in ways neither had expected. Jack found himself laughing more, talking more, and even seeking Ayanna's opinion on decisions he would have once made alone. He discovered that having someone he trusted didn't make him weaker, it made him stronger. He was no longer just a cowboy managing a ranch. He was part of a team, and that realization filled him with a quiet sense of pride and contentment. Ayanna, too, felt a sense of belonging she had not known before. She was no longer just a guest. She was a vital part of the ranch, a partner in every sense. The trust and respect she had earned were real and hard-won, and she cherished the quiet moments they shared as much as the moments of action and challenge.
One evening,
as the sun dipped behind the mountains and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Jack and Ayanna stood together at the edge of the fields. The wind rustled through the grass, and the air was filled with the familiar sounds of the ranch animals moving in their pens, the distant call of birds, and the soft creak of the cabin door. Jack broke the silence. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're here. More than I can explain." Ayanna smiled, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the firelight inside the cabin. "I feel the same, Jack. This place, these animals, this life, it feels right. And you've given me a chance I didn't think I'd ever have." Jack nodded slowly. He realized that the partnership they had built was more than just practical, it was emotional, real, and enduring. They had faced threats together, learned to trust one another, and grown stronger as a result. And though they could not yet see the future in its entirety, they both knew that together they could face whatever challenges came next. The night fell quietly over the ranch, and the stars shone brightly above. Inside the cabin, a small fire burned, casting warm light onto people who had come to trust, respect, and care for one another deeply. Their bond had been tested, strengthened, and solidified through trials, and it would carry them forward into whatever challenges lay ahead. It was clear now that their partnership was no longer tentative, it was real. And in the quiet moments that followed, both Jack and Ayanna felt a sense of peace and belonging they had never known before. The morning sun broke over the mountains, casting a warm glow across the ranch. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of grass and earth, and a soft breeze rustled the trees. Life had returned to a steady rhythm, but Jack knew that calm moments were always temporary on a working ranch. Still, he felt a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Things had changed, not just in his life, but in the heart of the ranch itself. Ayanna was already outside, tending to the animals. She moved with the ease of someone who truly belonged, guiding the cows, feeding the chickens, and checking on the horses. Jack watched her for a moment, appreciating her skill and dedication. Over the past week, she had proven herself time and again, not just through hard work, but through courage, wisdom, and unwavering loyalty. "Morning, Jack," she called, her voice carrying across the field. Jack nodded, a small smile forming on his face. "Morning. Looks like another busy day ahead." They worked together as usual, side by side, the rhythm of their movements seamless and efficient. But today there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if something significant was about to happen. As they were fixing a section of fence near the far pasture, a rider appeared in the distance. Jack squinted, trying to make out the figure. It was a young man, carrying a small package and riding hurriedly. As he approached, Jack noticed the emblem on his coat was from the town sheriff. The rider dismounted quickly, handing a letter to Jack. "Sheriff sent me." "He said it's urgent," the young man said. Jack opened the envelope carefully, reading the contents. The letter explained that a severe storm had been reported to the north and that several ranches were in danger. The sheriff was organizing assistance to prevent livestock loss and property damage. Jack's ranch was not directly in danger yet, but if they wanted to help neighbors, they would need to act quickly. Jack looked at Ayanna. "We need to go. It's not safe to wait." Ayana nodded without hesitation. I'm ready. Let's move quickly. They gathered supplies, saddled their horses, and rode toward the threatened area. As they traveled, Jack noticed how calm Ayana remained, even under the pressure of potential danger. He realized that her presence had changed him. He no longer felt the weight of responsibility alone. Together, they could face challenges that would have been overwhelming individually. When they arrived, the scene was tense. Several ranches had been affected, and the farmers were struggling to protect their animals and property. Ayana immediately took charge, helping to organize the livestock and coordinating efforts to build temporary shelters. Jack followed her lead, assisting where he could and relying on her experience and guidance. Hours passed, and the storm clouds began to break. Rain had drenched the fields, but thanks to their swift action, most of the livestock were safe, and the property damage was minimal. The neighboring farmers expressed gratitude, and Jack could feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. As the sun emerged from behind the clouds, Jack and Ayana returned to their own ranch. The day had been exhausting, but it had also solidified something important: trust. They had faced a real challenge together, and their partnership had been tested and proven strong. Back at the cabin, Jack finally allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He looked at Ayana, who was preparing a simple meal in the kitchen. She glanced up and smiled. "You did well today, Jack," said quietly. "So did you," she replied, her voice soft but confident. "We worked well together. That's what matters." Jack nodded slowly, feeling a mix of admiration and something deeper, an emerging sense of connection he hadn't expected. I think it's more than just working well together," he said, hesitating. "I've trusted few people in my life, and you've earned it, Ayana. More than I can explain." Ayana's eyes softened, and for a moment the room was filled with a quiet understanding. She placed a hand on the table and said, "I've never had a place where I felt truly needed. Here, with you, I feel like I belong." Jack's heart tightened with emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He realized that this wasn't just about trust or partnership, it was about acceptance. They had both faced loneliness, fear, and doubt. And now they had found someone who could stand beside them through life's challenges. Over the next few days, life on the ranch continued in its usual rhythm, but there was a new sense of balance. Jack and Ayana worked side by side, but they also shared quiet moments, laughing over small mistakes, exchanging stories by the fire, and simply enjoying each other's company. They were no longer just two people working together, they were a team. A partnership built on respect, loyalty, and trust. One afternoon, Jack was repairing a section of the barn roof when he heard Ayana calling him. She was standing in the yard, holding a bundle of freshly harvested vegetables. "Come down here for a minute," she said, smiling. Jack climbed down and walked over. She handed him the bundle. "I thought we could make a special meal tonight," she said. "For us, and maybe a few friends from the neighboring ranches. They helped us before, and it feels right to return the favor." Jack looked at her, impressed by her thoughtfulness. "You've got a good heart, Ayana. I see that now more than ever." She blushed slightly, but her eyes sparkled. "We've both learned a lot, Jack. About work, about life, about trust." "Yes, we have. And I don't want to lose this. What we've built together." That evening, they sat around a simple meal, the fire crackling beside them. The air was filled with the scents of roasted vegetables and freshly baked bread, and the quiet comfort of home. Jack realized that he no longer feared the future. He had found someone who understood him, who shared his burdens, and who had proven herself invaluable in every sense. As the night grew darker, Jack finally spoke the words he had been holding back. "Ayana, I want you to stay. Not just for now, but forever. You've proven your worth in ways I can't fully express. You've earned your place here, by my side, on this ranch. In my life." Ayana's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of relief and happiness. "Jack, I've wanted that from the moment I came here. I promised I'd give more than anyone else, and I always meant it. I'll stay, if you'll have me." Jack reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth and strength in her grip. I will. I want nothing more. From that night onward, the ranch felt different. It was no longer just a place of work and solitude. It was a home. Jack and Ayanna shared responsibilities, joys, and challenges. They faced each day together, knowing that whatever came their way, they would meet it as partners, trusted friends, and companions. Seasons changed, and the ranch flourished under their care. Crops grew stronger, animals were healthier, and the land thrived. But more importantly, the bond between Jack and Ayanna deepened. They learned to communicate without words, anticipating each other's needs and supporting one another through every challenge. Jack, who had once prided himself on solitude, now valued companionship more than anything. And Ayanna, who had once feared rejection and isolation, had found a place where she was truly needed and loved. One evening, as they stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of red and gold, Jack spoke softly. We've come a long way, haven't we? Ayanna leaned on his shoulder, smiling. Yes, we have. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it. Jack looked at her, his heart full. Neither would I. You've made this place, this life, better than I ever imagined. And you've made me better too. Ayanna's hand found his, and she squeezed it gently. We've built something real, Jack. Together. And in that quiet moment, with the wind rustling the grass and the stars beginning to twinkle above, they knew that their journey had reached a place of peace and fulfillment. They had faced trials, danger, and uncertainty, but they had come through stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. The ranch, the animals, and the land were not the only things that thrived. So did their trust, their respect, and their love for one another. Life would continue to bring challenges, but Jack and Ayanna were ready. Together, they had found not just survival, but home, belonging, and a partnership that could endure anything. And so, the cowboy and the woman who had begged to stay found their place in each other's lives. What began as a desperate plea had grown into something enduring, real, and deeply meaningful. They had both given more than words could describe, and in return, it gained everything they had ever hoped for trust, loyalty, and a life shared in true partnership.